It's kind of crazy how a little hobby such as playing video games could indirectly mold someone's interest outside of it, leading them into bigger hobbies or even careers. I mean, we hear it all the time when it comes to creatives today. They'd be like, yeah, growing up, X video game inspired me to be a programmer, or Y video games art direction was the inspiration for my art style, or even Z video games music is what got me into learning this instrument. And you can most definitely see the inspirations in a lot of the games we see today. Most of the topics I've talked about in the past kind of led to the idea of making this video because of the reception I've gotten with them, which led me to believe that a good number of you guys are actually creatives, and I find that awesome. What I'm trying to say is, while I feel like video games are a form of entertainment, I feel like they can also push a player into discovering something about themselves they didn't even know, and they could send them directly or indirectly down different kinds of paths, like creating videos, music, or even just art in general. And that's what I want to go over in today's video. And yeah, this is a very out there kind of topic compared to my other videos, and I feel like the idea of it can be so complex that it would take way longer to cover everything about it. But I guess while my channel is still kind of fresh, why not use this opportunity to kind of experiment with my content and go over this topic a little. There are instances where I hear about in-game creation tools becoming a gateway into level design or even programming. Some of my favorite games fall into this category, like one of my all-time favorites, LittleBigPlanet, to games like Mod Nation Racers, Gary's Mod, Dreams, Minecraft, and many more. Because I didn't start out as a PC gamer when I was little, my first introduction to the concept of custom content was through the Forge and custom game modes from Halo 3. Let me tell you, I look back on those days fondly because during those night-long sessions, there was no competitiveness, no drama, just people having fun and sharing what they found or made themselves. Then 1 year later came LittleBigPlanet, which heavily doubled down on this custom content concept, where the game basically gave you the tools to push your imagination past level creation. And these weren't like the basic tools you had in Halo 3 Forge, because the logic of the tools in LittleBigPlanet can be comparable to an actual programming language, but in a more friendlier visual format. Because of that, we had some simple maps people made like bomb survival or shark survival, but then there were the wizards that push beyond just creating a level to straight up changing the game to different genres like racing, fighting, first-person shooters, action RPGs, and so on. I'll be honest, my little kid brain didn't have the capacity to create such experiences, but playing them blew my mind, and that's why LittleBigPlanet is always going to sit at my top 10. Another game with this similar concept is Minecraft, obviously, you know, the sandbox of all sandboxes, with the logic of its redstone. And it's crazy how far people went with redstone, from just using it to make a fancy looking entrance to full-on creating complex structures like a computer. I can see why in-game tools like LittleBigPlanet and Minecraft can act as a gateway or the first spark into an interest in programming and modding, because some of the fundamentals are basically there without the player even realizing it. It's when they actually start learning about it in school where they go, oh shoot, this concept feels somewhat familiar. And honestly, that's really cool to think about. I've dabbled into programming a little bit later into my life, but I feel like if I were to step into LittleBigPlanet today, I could probably make something at the very least functional. And while video games can create programmers, I also feel like they can create musicians as well. The most common cases of this can be traced back to games like Guitar Hero or Rock Band. And because of how those games are played with these unique controllers, I feel like it can also form an interest in actually trying out the real thing, while possibly teaching you some skills that may or may not translate over. I, for one, had that idea after playing a lot of Guitar Hero as a kid, and it was during high school when I signed up for a guitar class and realized, hey, this is actually pretty fun. I kind of want to do this a little bit more. Obviously, the feeling of a real guitar was completely different from the controller, but the hand-eye coordination and rhythm were faintly there. I even had a friend who also started playing guitar long before me because of Guitar Hero, and was already miles ahead of the class because we were all just beginners. The dude also taught me the magical drop D tuning, and obviously this all wasn't perfect. You know, it's not like we immediately started to shred when we picked up a real guitar, because there's so much more to learning an instrument than just pressing color-coded buttons at the right time. I learned that when I started reading sheet music. However, because these kind of games can potentially spark an initial interest in the music field, it kind of shows the influence that video games can have beyond just gaming. I remember an interview floating somewhere online where Post Malone said his initial spark into making music was from Guitar Hero, which is pretty insane. And I'm not gonna say a lot on this part, but another way video games can influence influenced this way is when the game's soundtrack is just that mesmerizing, to the point it influences you to try and play it on an instrument like a piano or guitar. Tracks commonly played like To Xanarkin from Final Fantasy X, Dearly Beloved from Kingdom Hearts, the Undertale soundtrack, or even anything from Nintendo can really be proof of that. As a kid, I had a lot of fun with the replay tools implemented in video games. Although it was a good way to replay some of the cool shots you've landed or high kill games you previously had, there are also people out there that had way more creative ideas for it. In my opinion, these tools in-game were such a huge step forward in digital content creation because other than just gameplay, it made getting any form of video game footage a lot more accessible, most likely encouraging the players to use it for more than just saving their good games. There were earlier forms of this kind of content, but my favorite example would be the early days of YouTube, when some of the most popular videos were machinimas, which in simple terms can be skits, music videos, or anything cinematic with the use of the video game itself. Halo 3 and Gmod machinimas usually come to my mind when I think of this era of YouTube, and it was thanks to the accessibility of the tools that I was able to see this new wave of creatives taking over the platform. And yeah, the tools were pretty intuitive to where people were able to replicate some fundamental camera angles without them even knowing. They were just following what the standard was back then, like red versus blue. You pair that with determination, a good script, and a likely bootlegged editing software, then you rake in the moolah with your masterpiece. Nah, but for real, this would probably have to be around the time where I thought about getting into YouTube. I remember with my first couple of videos, I would put my parents' laptop camera in front of the TV screen while I make my Spartan do stupid stuff in theater mode. And along those years, I quote-unquote bought Sony Vegas and had a friend show me the wonderful world of Call of Duty edits, which took my editing journey even further. And now I'm using DaVinci because I don't want to give my arm and leg to Adobe. And yeah, I kind of missed that kind of gaming content back then because today the landscape is pretty different. But the theater mode tools are pretty much there in a majority of the contemporary games if people want to always take their content a step further, especially with the funny moments type stuff. But if there are any tools, there are usually people out there more than willing to find ways. Now, this can mean a lot of things because of how broad the term is, so I'm gonna just try my best. This doesn't come directly from the game, more so outside of it, but it's that video games can be an ultimate source of inspiration for any kind of visual arts, whether it be through the concept art, character designs, and immersive environments. I mean, there has to be a moment in time in any gamer's life where they just randomly draw Kirby, a Mario mushroom, or even the Triforce from Zelda. It's always the little stuff like those kind of things that usually spark some sort of interest in drawing. Personally, when I was young, my inspiration really gravitated towards the early Newgrounds / Dan Paladin type of art style with Castle Crashers because it was easy and fun for me to draw rather than something like Master Chief at the time. Then as I got older, I branched out by trying to draw the Smash Bros roster to eventually studying the art direction of Jet Set Radio with its grind fiction type of art style, which really helped me in the long run. When starting out, I learned that eventually you'll grow out of trying to replicate an art style, and somewhere along your journey, you start to develop your own, with little similarities of the one you previously studied. I just find it cool how something as small as a doodle of your favorite video game character could potentially lead to something bigger with enough dedication and practice. Overall, this video was a mess, but it was a mess that my stubborn self was willing to tackle, even though I knew I wouldn't be able to cover everything about it. While video games can be a source of entertainment, I feel like it can also be a source of inspiration, self-discovery, or even skill development. For almost any hobby you can think of, whether it be programming, creating music, making videos, visual arts, or even something like skateboarding, I feel like gaming had to have at least some sort of part of that influence. And sometimes those games could at the very least teach you some fundamentals before you even start that hobby. I really feel like a lot of creatives within this generation had to have been gamers early into their careers before they fully dove into the field full time. And I think it'd be safe to say that it's most likely going to be that way moving forward. But that's all I have to say for today. If you watched the video up to this point, I really appreciate it. And if a video game ever inspired you to dive into a skill, I'm genuinely curious. Let me know what game and what skill in the comments below. This topic was really out of my comfort zone, I'm gonna be honest, and it was really scary to dive into, but I just wanted to challenge myself. But if you want to see more videos from me, good and bad, please press that like and subscribe button, and I'll get straight to work. Thank you again, guys. As always, stay super safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video.